I said, I want to not have regrets and I want to live life on my own terms. And you just realize at some point, if that's what you want to do, you have to have money to do it.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest with me. Now, this is a guest that's 2.0. He's been on the show before, so without any further ado, we've got Chris Larsen. Chris, welcome to the show.
Jeremy, great to see you. And man, I love that. Chris 2.0. I might start using that.
Well, you're more than welcome to use it. The reason why I had you on my show 120 episodes ago now was primarily because you and I are cut from a very similar cloth in terms of our background and kind of our journey and what we're focused on today. So just to give my listening audience a little bit more background on Chris before we chop it up, he's the founder and principal of Next Level Income, and since retiring after 18 years in the medical device industry, he now dedicates his time to helping others become financially independent through education and investment opportunities. He's also been investing in and managing real estate now for over 20 years. So again, very similar background you and I have, again, in terms of our past, what we're focused on today. Yeah. So would maybe love for you to kind of, maybe unpack, what that journey's looked like for you, up until today and what you're currently focused on.
Yeah, no, Jeremy, and again, thanks for having me back on. I really enjoyed our first experience, and I can't believe it's amazing. 120 episodes ago. Congrats to you. We'd love to have you on our podcast here as we crest. I think we just passed 6 years this month, if I recall. But yeah, you mentioned a little bit, and speaking of 2.0, I just crossed 25 years since buying my first property in 1999. So. Kind of rewinding back to then, I was in college at Virginia Tech, and I all I wanted to do when I went to school was race my bike. So I wanted to be a professional cyclist. Went to school. If you heard me on the first one, I think I talked about losing my best friend in between my freshman and sophomore years in college, and I raced that following year, and I just realized that there was more to life than riding my bike around in a circle. And that's kind of the funny thing. Like cycling, people talk. I saw somebody said, "Oh, it's a green sport." I'm like, no, it's not a green sport at all. Yeah, riding your bike is kind of green, but you drive to a bike race. You have cars that are following, in front, behind, motorcycles in the races. These big caravans in the pro races. It's really interesting. So I really enjoy now today actually being green and riding my bike like downtown to a meeting or around town. And this realization dawned on me that wow, like my friend died at 18. What if I died tomorrow? Like, would I really be fulfilled and happy? And after about a year of contemplation, I realized that the answer was no. And I went back to school. I quit racing and I started to live kind of a normal college life that I wasn't living before. I mean, I wouldn't drink a cup of coffee. I wouldn't take a Tylenol or a Advil. I definitely wouldn't drink. So it makes it challenging to have fun and meet people in a college environment. So I had a lot of fun, but I also had a lot of catching up to do with respect to my schooling. I didn't want to be an engineer. But that following year, as part of that same kind of revelation, I said, I want to not have regrets and I want to live life on my own terms. And you just realize at some point, if that's what you want to do, you have to have money to do it. So I set out on this journey for financial independence, which led me to buy that first property. And fast forward, I went to work in the medical device industry to get more capital to buy more properties. I became this addicted investor, as you certainly know as well. What that feeling's like, and then scaled into commercial, investment and then ultimately commercial syndication. And here we are. Oh, we've done. I think we're going. I have to add it up here. We have a property that will be closing on this month. We're closing on 2 billion in total transactions done across all the different sectors with our partners here. Placed about 120 million of capital, hundreds of investors, and yeah, like you said in the intro, our mission through all of this is to help others achieve financial independence as well through not just those investment opportunities, but really the education.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate
Yeah,
you breaking that down again for our listening audience,
yeah,
Chris. A lot of people that listen to this podcast, right? They're busy professionals, grinding out a paycheck.
yeah,
My primary
yeah,
investor avatar, is highly compensated sales professionals because that's who
yep,
I was,
yep,
for a period of 2.5 decades. Really, let's talk specifically about kind of the
yeah,
mental mindset shift that you had to
yeah.
go through, where you were, crushing the paychecks, right? Year
Hmm.
in, year out. And then you got to this point where you're like, I can't do this forever. Okay. I got to
Yeah.
find a way to replace the dependence on the W 2. And so what kind of brought you, into the real estate space after having maybe, learned that there's a different way to go about this?
Yeah, and like I worked for great companies. I know you were with one of the top payroll companies, which we use today to pay our payroll. I was with like Medtronic, which is one of the leaders in the medical device industry. And what's interesting is when I set out, I did see myself as an investor. So I think if you're listening today, the first thing you can do, which is a pretty easy mental shift, is to say, I'm an investor. Robert Kiyosaki talks about the different quadrants, right? So, do you want to be self employed? Do you want to be an employee? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you want to be an investor? You can be some or all of them, but primarily you want to think of yourself as an investor. You want to train yourself to be an investor. Now the question is then, how do you find deals? How do you fund those deals? And I saw my career as a path to generate capital to really embody that idea of being an investor. However, along the way, and this is challenging. It's like anything, whether you're in a relationship and you sit down in a bar and you're like, oh, there's an attractive person sitting next to me. You can get distracted, from your original view on things. And the point is, it's okay to sit at a bar and recognize that somebody's attractive, but you don't go home with them, right? If you're in a committed relationship. So if you see yourself as an investor first, you have to be careful of getting distracted by those shiny objects along the way. One of those is, hey, what's your title? What's your job title? Right? Oh, I'm a VP, right? That's hard to let go of. And I think one of the big challenges we face is specifically um, and maybe this is controversial, but as a man in America, as Americans, we're so status oriented and materialistic, and as men, as providers, I think we take a lot of pride in kind of our role and our status in society. So it's I mean, when you go to meetings, especially in sales, as you know, Jeremy, it's like, well, how much did you make last year? In sales, you kind of know what other people make. Like, are you a VP? Like, what's your role? So you have to, if you're on your journey towards financial independence, you have to have that vision of what you want to be, but then you also have to be wary of the fact that at some point you're going to have to step away from the status, the paycheck, the position, the titles, and step towards that freedom, which we appreciate in society. Like we're just like, oh wow, Jeremy can do whatever he wants, but we don't really know where to classify that in our head. We're like, well, is he better than me? Is he, does he make more money than me? Is his net worth like what? When you say, hey, I have more freedom than you, that's very appealing, and I think that's really what we all strive for. So once you have that idea of who you are and then are aware of some of the pitfalls along the way, then the last piece of it after, the knowledge and all that is really surrounding yourself with the right people that can encourage that and keep you on track and see that. Um, and I would say the best thing as a father is my family reminds me of that because they don't really care what's on my business card. They care about the time that I spend together. listening to great podcasts like yours and hearing other people that are going out and doing those things is great. But I would say, you know, the biggest piece of all that is kind of having that self awareness of who you want to be, and being conscious that there's going to be a day that comes when you have to take that fork in the road, and it's probably going to pull you away from what society is pulling you towards.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I so appreciate
Yeah,
you kind of breaking that down for us. And you're exactly
yeah,
right. I mean,
yeah,
at the end of the day, we can always spend more time to create more income or more money, right? But at the end of the
yeah,
day, you can't
yeah.
create any more time. So what are you choosing to spend your time
Correct.
on now? And I really
Yeah,
appreciate you breaking down, the importance of, letting go of the status. I think sometimes
yeah,
people are so fixated on, keeping up with the Joneses, the right car, the
yeah,
right neighborhood, the right
yeah,
house, the right, like you said, the right title in an organization. Once you can get beyond, having to live for those status symbols in your life, that's when you can get to that first level of what I would believe to be that independence, right?
yes,
You've gotten
yeah,
to that mindset where now you can realize that you don't have to live your life according to the system or what the system tells you, right? You can escape from those shackles and then start to build upon that. Obviously, one of those biggest building blocks is getting into something, whether you're actively managing a small business as an entrepreneur or it's
yeah,
investing in something that produces regular, consistent cash flow. So I'd like
yeah.
to go back to 1999, if that's okay. All right. And if
Let's go.
and if I'm nailing this correct, at 1999, you were 21 years of age.
You nailed it. Yeah,
Perfect. So at that time, you bought your first single family rental. Okay. I bought mine when I was 23. So not all that far off
yeah,
from you. But
yeah.
what lessons did you specifically learn from that experience? And how
Mhm.
do those lessons learned still guide your investment strategy today?
Yeah. So it's it's interesting. I look back. I'm trying to kind of envision myself in 1999, and I see less facial hair and more hair on the top of my head. But I I think the big thing is, we don't really appreciate what people can accomplish at a young age. So one of the things is, you can look at it two ways. You can say, "Oh, I wish I started when Jeremy did," or you can say, "I'm going to learn what Jeremy knows today, and I'm going to take the shortcut and do it that way." So one of the big things I learned, Jeremy, is I didn't do that. I learned the hard way. So people look back and they're like, "Oh, wow, you did all this, you bought all these properties at a young age," but I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So 15 years later, which is 10 years ago, I knew a lot of stuff. And if I knew that when I was 21, I would have gone even faster. So the first thing is, wherever you are today, whether you're 21 or 41 or 61, find somebody that has walked that path and allow them to show you the shortcut, because they're going to know the pitfalls. They're going to know where to go. So kind of going back to that same mindset, which is surround yourself with people that have the same vision and goals and values that you do. Uh, the the other thing is that real estate, and this is, I think I knew this, but I do distinctly thinking I would get to my goal faster, and also my goals were lower. So I'm gonna say two things as I kind of think out loud here. Number one is real estate is a get rich slow game, and as I say that, I have a philosophy around that. I kind of developed. But real estate is a get rich slow game. And then the other piece is set your goals not two times higher, but like 10 times higher. Like set them really big, and find people that, especially if you're younger, go find people that have achieved those things. They'll talk to you. I talked to a young gentleman last week, or maybe it was right before um, that, and he's a freshman in college, and he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I said, "Let's have a call." And he wants to be in real estate, and I was sharing. It was awesome because I saw in him what I had. So don't be afraid to go and talk to people. And then, if I may, around that philosophy, I think we talk about compound interest a lot, but we forget to talk about compound time. So what I learned, and I think I knew this because my friend had passed away, so I kind of lived it. But every minute compounds on the minute before it. Every day compounds on the day before it. So if you say, "Hey, I'm going to go out and party, I'm going to go travel and do all these things, and I'm not going to do the things that can help move me towards my goals," then you're going to fall further and further behind somebody that does that. And what happens is if you compound your time in the right way over, you know, your 20s, for instance, by the time you're 30, you can be financially independent and you can have the rest of your life to be free. So I think this is backwards than what we hear, which is take a bunch of risk when you're young. I don't think that's actually the best advice. My advice would be if you're young, develop a plan that has a high degree of probability of getting where you want to be. Because if I can tell you, hey, it's going to take you 7 years to be financially free if you do these steps, maybe it takes you 5, maybe it takes you 10, maybe it takes you 15. But if you're 21 years old and you're 35 and you're financially independent, I mean, I hope to live to be 122 years old. So if you're financially independent at 35, that's almost 90 years you got in front of you. It's amazing, right? Just amazing, amazing things that you can do if you follow. Uh, much different than we hear. And the last thing is you can do it all. Like you can achieve your goals, you can have fun in life because we don't know how long we're going to be here. So, don't do everything towards a financial goal. Take care of your body, take care of your health, spend time with friends and loved ones, have a great relationship, have a family. You can do all those things. But if you want to do only one really well and be the best at something, you will have to sacrifice in some of those. So you got to be conscious of that too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I really appreciate
Yeah.
you breaking that down for the listeners,
Yeah.
Chris, and just appreciate your perspective on, people with tenacity, maybe having, massive goals versus baby goals and, compounding their
Yeah.
time and really this kind of concept of leverage, and really, leveraging other people's time, other people's experience, maybe other people's network, their own
Yeah.
lessons learned, all that can be really impactful for those that are willing to spend the time on the front end, to
Yeah.
really position themselves in life, to surround themselves with other people that they can, in fact, tap into that leverage.
Yeah.
My next kind of question is really kind of around, your perspective on diversifying into
Yeah.
investing, whether that be Wall Street or
Mhm.
Main Street. I know
Yeah.
that your personal portfolio includes, private lending, distressed debt,
Yeah.
car washes. How do you
Yeah.
decide which asset classes to focus on, and how do they maybe complement or not complement one another?
Yeah. So I think one of the important thing to consider is that I started investing in the stock market when I was 18, 18, 19. I think I was a freshman, so we've been 18. Bought my first piece of real estate at 21. So my portfolio and what it looks like may not be right for you if you're probably listening to Jeremy and I today to say, okay, how can I learn more about these passive income opportunities? And like my coaching client I was talking to earlier today, maybe you got 70% of your portfolio tied up in the stock market. That's okay. Stock market's been doing great. So the first thing is you have to say, okay, like what are your goals? If you are tied up, 80-90% in the stock market, you look at what the wealthiest families out there are doing. I was just talking to a gentleman that helps manage the Hilton's wealth. I'm holding his book right here, and he says, "Hey, stock market wealth of 20-30% in income producing real estate, and that's going to help the volatility of your portfolio, increase passive income." And that's the second piece, which is what is your goal? You say, hey, I want to work until I'm 65 and retire and draw 4% of my portfolio out as long as I can and hope I don't outlive my money. Or wait, I said that wrong. Hope my money outlives me, right? It's kind of this is the problem, right? You're like, well, wait, is it really a problem if I die soon? You want a strategy that encourages you to live because I think these things are subconscious, right? Like my grandfather, true story, died the month that his long-term care ran out. So, and it was a joke in the family that he knew it was running out, and that's why he died that month. So I think there's more truth to that than joke, frankly. Um, so consider your goals from a diversification perspective, but then consider, do your investments actually provide the lifestyle that you are going after? And then for me, and this could be a hours long conversation, but I developed my portfolio really around two kind of central things. One is I follow big trends, generally around demographics. So if you've read my book, or if you want to get a copy, you can get it at nextlevelincome.com. It's a little blurry. How can we get that? There we go. Nextlevelincome.com. Click on the book link if the pop up doesn't come up. And if you put your address in, we'll even send you a copy for free. In there, I talk about demographics and what led me to multifamily, as well as the medical device space, as well as some of the other areas we're looking at right now. But I also talk about the value add strategy. So I'm a big fan of following investments that have great demographic tailwinds, but then also investments that have an income component as well as an appreciation component and the ability to have some control of that value. So all those things that you mentioned, Jeremy. Actually, we don't do a lot of distressed debt anymore. We have a debt fund where we lend for fix and flip investors, and that's all based kind of around the demographics of the millennials that are buying homes now that we're trying to fulfill that. So that doesn't necessarily have the value add bend to it, but it has that strong demographic base underneath of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes total sense. And there's different types of investment options out there for different types of
Yep.
people. Obviously, for you and me both,
Yeah.
I'm sure we would certainly preach, diversification in the multifamily space. For example, I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of diversification of operator, of asset
Yeah.
class, of market location, those types of things.
I'm Zach Captainstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
Absolutely.
When speaking about that individual investor, maybe that they've got a similar background as you and me. Maybe they came from
Yeah.
medical device, or they're a top
Yeah.
sales professional in the technology space. What would you tell that investor that maybe has some dry powder on the sidelines, or maybe has
Mhm.
access to capital in an IRA, and they're looking to invest? What are the
Yeah.
biggest challenges maybe that you see that
Yeah.
investor having to navigate through, before they decide to partner with somebody like Chris or I, or another sponsor directly?
Yeah, great question. And we actually we talk a lot about this with our coaching clients. We have actually a piece of software technology that helps investors go through all these questions to vet sponsors. So if you're interested, you can shoot me an email, Chris at nextlevelincome.com. I can kind of share that with you. But the big thing is you need to understand kind of the general investment that you're interested. So why do you want to be invested in multifamily? So ask yourself that question. If you're starting off and you're like, well, I don't know, Chris, like, why should it be multifamily? Should it be self storage? Talk to operators, talk to guests on Jeremy's show, and say, hey, like, why are you in multifamily? Why are you in car washes? Why are you in self storage or mobile home parks or whatever it may be? And put that let those sponsors give you that information. Don't be afraid of missing out. If you spend a year like I did researching the options that are out there, and the sponsors that are out there, and then making that decision, that's totally fine. You got to make a choice at some point. You got to take massive action and start moving. But take your time and educate yourself. When it comes to sponsors, again, you want to make sure that what they're saying is congruent with your investment thesis. You want to make sure that you guys are on the same page. You want to know, okay, how long have they been in business? Have they taken deals full cycle? You want to, and again, this is that the software has all these questions that you can ask and go through. What type of financing is going to be on the property? That's been a big issue for sponsors here recently, which is, if you have a property that you need to refinance today that you bought 2 or 3 years ago, you can be in a lot of trouble with respect to that. One of the other things that I would look at, and this is kind of going around your question a little bit, but I talk about it in episode 100 of my podcast, is the real estate cycle. So right now, prices are high, interest rates are high. It's hard not only to buy a home and afford to buy a house. It's more affordable to rent, but rents are still pretty high. If you have a sponsor that says, "Hey, rents are going to go up 5% a year for the next 10 years," I don't know if we have the space to do that. So you have to understand the ability of a sponsor and a operator to underwrite a deal and what their assumptions are. Because I can take my spreadsheet and I can punch in different numbers and tweak things here and there, and I can make a deal look amazing or really terrible, really fast. So number one, get your investment thesis, figure out what asset class you want to be in. Number two, interview, vet sponsors, make sure you understand the questions that you need to ask with that. And then the last piece is understand how assumptions are made in all of these things, because that's what really I found comes back to bite you is, and that comes from the engineering degree I have, I think, which is, what are your assumptions? Are your assumptions correct? Iterate, solve the problem again, and, go back and do it all over again.
Yeah, I appreciate your breaking that down. You gave a little mini master class on how to vet a sponsor. So really appreciate you highlighting the
Yeah.
fact that you need to ask questions, above and beyond, that you also need to know what types of questions are the right types of questions to ask. But,
Yeah.
beyond that, this concept of, not having FOMO, right? Don't be fearful that you
Yeah.
could potentially miss out on the
Yeah.
opportunity. There are some sponsors that fill up their deals pretty quickly, and there's some that say that they do, but they don't actually, right? So make sure that you
Yeah.
spend enough time, doing your due diligence up front, but don't obviously get analysis paralysis, because eventually at some point you just have to get started. But,
Yeah.
also ensuring that the investment you mentioned, aligns with your, level of risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
Or aligns with your own interest, right? And then of
Yeah.
course,
Absolutely.
focusing on the debt structure and, understanding that there's all different, levels and degrees of the economic cycle, and knowing where we're at in the current economic cycle, I think can help you become, a more prudent
Yeah.
investor.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a great point in saying, okay, what assets perform well at different points in the cycle, and where are we demographically, and all those things. And then understanding that there are things that we just got hit by Hurricane Helene here in Asheville, totally out of the blue. COVID, totally out of the blue. I don't think you could have predicted COVID and the effect it has on work from home. So again, going back to your one of your earlier points, Jeremy, is regardless of what you do, make sure you do have some degree of diversification, because those unknown unknowns are what are really going to come back to bite you.
That's great. Well, I'd like to maybe look on the inside a little bit, Chris, and
Yeah.
maybe kind of have you share with our listening audience a little bit more about, balancing work life and family life. I know that
Yeah.
you're a father, you're an entrepreneur, you're a friend. How do you balance, your personal life with managing diverse investments, while also mentoring others in the space?
Yeah. So, I can kind of go into like specifics. I think one of the things I've become good at over the years from racing and having kind of a very heavy academic schedule, and then going back to racing my bike after I quote unquote retired, and working and being on call, I had to become really good at managing my time. And one of the tools that I've used came from my coach Craig Ballantyne and his book The Perfect Week. And if I'm looking here on my other screen, I just pulled up my calendar. So what I do every week, and actually it starts at the beginning of the year. So there's a few different things you put on here. So you have your non-negotiables. So I'm not going to talk specifics, but I want to tell you how you can choose for yourself. So look at your week, take your non-negotiables, those things that you must get done to be your healthiest, your happiest, your wealthiest. This is: what time do you wake up? When do you work out? Those are really important. When do you do your personal development? This could be everything from analyzing a deal in the morning to reading the Bible, depending on what is important to you in your life at that time. Those non-negotiables go in there. For me, this also includes family time. So I'm looking on here, and tomorrow night, I know that at 5 o'clock, I have my son's basketball game, and I have an hour blocked off before that. So that's at 4 o'clock. I have to cut my day off. So my assistant knows nothing gets there. I also block off the days when my boys don't have school, so I can spend a day with them. That's like our father son time that we do. You got your date nights and those sorts of things. Now you say, "Wow, Chris, that's really nice that you can do those things as an entrepreneur. Maybe I can't do those things." You can do those things. You just have to, I was on call. Sometimes you can't always do them perfectly, but you can do those things if you set those times. You ask for time off. Then you have your things at work that are they call them NUI, right? Non-urgent but important. So those things that I need to revamp my marketing plan. Maybe I want to write a book, right? It's not urgent, but it's really important. So when are you going to do that? You schedule that next. And then everything else kind of falls in after that. And then the last piece is anything that you can systematize, outsource, automate, you look at all that. And these are things that are probably like urgent, but maybe not that important. You can have somebody else do that. And I like to tell my coaching clients, hey, find those like $15 an hour tasks. Don't do them yourself. Find somebody else to do them. If you're worth $150 an hour, and I know there's a lot of people out there listening that are making, $200,000, $300,000 a year or more, find somebody that you can pay $15 an hour to help out. Shop for your groceries, mow your lawn, wash your car, do these things. Some of our friends, some of our actually closest friends are those that like there are guys that own our landscaping business, that clean our that help out around the house and our properties, and do other things. So we get to support their business. We can make more money working in our role. We support the local economy. We have friends. We increase our network and do those things. So real quick, schedule the most important things first. For both personal and business. Let the rest of the stuff fill in itself, and then look for opportunities where you can outsource anything in there, and you will be amazed at how productive you can be.
Yeah, that's incredible. I appreciate you breaking that down. Really it comes down
Yeah,
to, living a life of clarity, of purpose,
yeah,
and really being intentional, right?
yeah,
If you don't have clarity, purpose, and intention, it's going to be very difficult to live the type of life, that you've
yeah,
laid out for us. It kind of really reminds me, of this really 2-year long period in my own life, while I was, working 50 hours a week, crushing commission checks in the high tech sales space while wearing an entrepreneurship hat at the same time, and realizing that as my side hustle was becoming more and more my main hustle, I was still as productive with the
yeah,
technology sales job. And the reason why that was the case is because I had to reprioritize my day and focus on
yeah,
what's important now, and really remove a lot of the fodder or the wheat, the
yep,
chaff in my life, and just
yeah,
focus on those important things. So it really just comes
yeah.
down to your willingness to want to recalibrate.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And what you just said, I found to be absolutely true. It's the Pareto principle, right? Like you're probably 20% of what really moves the needle. Like if you can cut out that other 80%, just focus on that 20%, put the pedal down, and then just work smarter. People say, oh, don't work harder, work smarter. Work smarter and work harder, and you will absolutely crush everybody else.
Yep. Well, this gives this podcast episode a lot more meaning, knowing that both of us think similarly and conduct our lives
Mhm.
similarly, to have given each other, 45 minutes of each other's time. So I appreciate you
Absolutely.
spending time here.
Yeah.
What would be maybe kind of next,
Yeah.
up for Chris Larsen and next level income? Maybe what's next on
Yeah.
your, goals over the next 12 months, et cetera?
Yeah, well, thanks. I'll tell you personally, I'm really excited. I'm going to spend 3 weeks out in Salt Lake City with my son. Actually, he'll be out there for about two. We're going to ski. I'm going out there for the best ever conference. So if you're out there, look me up. From a business perspective, we got some really cool investment opportunities that are coming out for investors, that we think will be great opportunities, not only over the next year, but over the next decade. You can check out nextlevelincome.com and click on the invest link if you want to learn more about that. But also go to nextlevelincome.com. If you're just starting off, check out the podcast, get a free copy of the book, read the blog. All of that is free. And our big goal, again, like you were mentioning, Jeremy, is to help as many people on their journey. So start there. Let us know how we can help out. Chris@nextlevelincome.com. Feel free to email me.
That's great. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes for the episode. Chris, as always, appreciate you providing tremendous value to our listeners today.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great to see you again, my friend.
Likewise. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us.